curses, and how do they relate to anti-curses? How do they relate to, shadows and things of that nature? So is that something you'd be able to go into some detail for us on?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good topic. Because I feel like I'm under a curse right now in real time, and I'm just like, how do I get out of it? No, it's good. So a curse is based on a lie. So something that's not true, but you're acting it out as if it were true. So that's a curse, simplified. Now, why a curse is bad is because it changes the trajectory of one's true path. Okay, so for example, um, a really good example, a relevant one, is what happened that sparred the Black Lives Movement, is because there are people still in America that tell themselves or believe that a Black person's life um, is less than a white person's life. They don't consciously think about it, but subliminally or subconsciously, it's in the back of their mind. But and then and then when they act it out, it comes in the form of like, seeing someone in a black hoodie in the middle of the night and thinking, oh, I'm going to shoot them, because they automatically equate black people with like thievery or robbery or some kind of aggression. So that's a kind of curse that the person who, let's say, like shot someone uh, with, unarmed in the middle of the night would do, because they're living under a curse. They're living under a reality that simply is not true. So a prejudice, a stereotype, um, racism is a curse. These are just some very poignant examples of curses, but of course, in each individual life, we all have curses we contend with. Um, I'm not good enough. So and so's evil. I mean, they might be half evil, but they're not all evil. You know what I mean? So, like, these kind of nuances matter. I think a lot of times we twist parts of the truth and then we believe in the lie. And so then we, the person who believes in the lie, we're under a curse. And curses are bad because it always leads to the absence of love, and it's a dead end, and it causes a lot of suffering and pain and mental health crises. So curse is not good. How is that related to a shadow? Well, a shadow is something that you possess. It is something that you're contending with. It's something, it could be hate, it could be judgment, uh, it could be something like that you're believing in, um, that just isn't loving, you know. But there's two kinds of shadows. There's the noble shadow, which is based on the truth, and there's the alchemized shadow, which is based on the lie. Now, the alchemized shadow is what causes curses to manifest. Um, a truthful shadow is there, but it is unreactive. It's unreactive in that you know it's there, but you know it's coming from you. And if it's coming from you, it's a lot of times a matter of needing a higher power, a spiritual guide, a spiritual um, helper to work through that shadow. And ideally, you would want to integrate it so it doesn't alchemize into a curse. What happens when we don't own up to our own experiences, our own hatred, our own prejudices, our own judgments, then we end up projecting it onto other people and we make them the scapegoat. Even if they have the very same shadow that you have, let's say they do have the exact same shadow you have, and it's true. It's still a curse because you're still avoiding your own shadow and you're focusing way too much on trying to change someone else's willpower rather than your own. And we call that today codependency, or like just being manipulative, controlling, conniving, whatever, you know. Regardless, it's not good because you're trying to manipulate and force somebody else's free will when the only control you have is your own free will. And what I noticed is like the more you force something on someone else, the more they'll resist. So it is better to contend with our own shadows through exercising our own free will, because that's the only exercise of change you can actually do, realistically. So a shadow exists in everybody, by the way. Like we're all two sides of the same coin. We're all yin and yang. We're all like half good and half bad. You know, obviously there's a range, but you know, we're all a little mix of that. So shadows exist because free will exists, and that's a good thing that free will exists. So the presence of a shadow within us isn't so bad per se. Like some people get depressed, you know, and that's because they're contending with their own shadows. That's not a bad thing. It's just where what needs to take place for the soul to grow. It just becomes maladaptive when we ignore or delay the self-awareness and the contention within. When we delay that, we stay in arrested development spiritually and like emotionally. Psychologically, we're stunted as well. And so being able to acknowledge that you have this shadow, even like that's why confessions are so powerful. I mean, it goes all the way down the line of human history, the power of confession. Catholics have priests that have booths where people could confess. 12-step programs have sponsorships, and during the 4th, 5th, and 6th steps of the 12-step program, it's an action of confessing. The Love Story has, in the Mirror Darkly programs, the confession, a message in a bottle prompt for people to start moving through that. And what it does is when we start illuminating our own shadows, we suddenly have free will again, to be able to choose light or shadow. You know, it's just simply the case. And then we also get more compassion towards other people whose shadows we recognize almost instantaneously. It just sticks out like a sore thumb. And instead of hating on the other person, we are better equipped to forgive because we recognize that same thing in ourselves. And that's where the peace happens, the serenity happens. We start recognizing that it's just part of the process of being human. So going back to anti-curses, how do we produce an anti-curse from a curse? An anti-curse is simply the non-action of the curse. Like it's there. Like I know right now there's a few curse scripts in my own brain. it just floats through. It's not something I can control. It has a mind of its own, a voice of its own, and it just comes and goes. But I acknowledge that it's a curse, and that's the beginning of transformation, because an anti is exactly the opposite. It opposes the curse. You will not. The curse was in the original, God's curse when you bite from the fruit of knowledge, knowing good and evil, is you will surely die. And then the serpent lied and said, you will surely not die. But then somehow that lie became the anti-curse. And I know it's so counterintuitive, but what happened during the fall of God and the resurrection of God is that that lie became the truth. You will surely not die. So you will bite from the fruit, knowing good and evil, and you will surely not die. And a lot of Judeo-Christian believers will today say, oh yeah, that's actually true. And that's an example of an anti-curse, the power of the not. You will not surely die. So first, you got to recognize a curse. I think a good example I gave myself originally was that all white people are racist. And then that was the lie. And then I reverse projected it. So it's all racists are not white. And then I added a not. All racists are not white people. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that, because then there in and of itself becomes a silver lining, opening to more of a universal battle, right? Rather than like a tribalistic battle between good and evil. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the ism that we have to fight, not so much a color behind that ism. So, it opens it up. And then I have power in that spell, because then I could become self-aware that, like, wow, there's a part of me in my heart that's turning bitter and becoming more and more racist, and I have to contend with that. I suffer through these experiences because, after like a very specific incident that happened to me only a few months back, that was racially charged, that was unfair against me. I have now, the only control I have at this point is how I respond to what had happened. And I could either respond by turning bitter about it and then playing eye for an eye, or I can choose more of a redemptive, turn the other cheek path, which is very hard to do, actually. It is so much easier to put it in a textbook and write it out in a paragraph than it is to actually apply it in real time. And for me, acting on the anti-curse is acting on the awareness that not all people, wait, what was the anti-curse again? Not all white people are, not all racists are white people. Not all racists are white people. Or racists are not white. I forgot. Not all racists are white people. We'll just stick with that. and then like that gets me some clarity. I'm like, okay, I have a choice in the matter. Because now I'm even thinking about writing like a whole long list of people in my life who are white that I'm thankful for. Um, for example, my best friend in elementary school, her name's Janet. She has like twins now she lives in San Diego. Elementary school. My first best friend, white. You know what I mean? So it's just like, all right, I have to literally like conscientiously have to write everything down, like all the gratitudes. That way, because I'm fighting my own shadow right now. Like it's legit. Like I'm fighting with an alchemy shadow. Because when I'm actually dealing with such a heavy topic like racism, you're actually like not just looking at my particular incident, but like through the tunnel of like historically, how has racism devastated indigenous and black communities, how it's devastated Japanese Americans, and the Japanese, in Hiroshima. And like what does it mean now, like in terms of like growing anti Chinese sentiments, in certain parts of America, and fears of Chinese Americans. So it's just like these kind of things like open up a whole portal in my heart. So going back to the example of, curses and anti-curses, it is legit needed right now in our society. And I'm dealing with it in real time. Like, and that's how I use in real time, Rachel. I know that's one of your questions on like why I use it. Um, Yeah, so it's like in the immediate present perfect moment, literally right before this conversation happened, I was like dealing with a lot, in terms of like my mind and like this curse. There is a curse on me, and I have to swim upstream like a salmon and recognize that there is also an anti-curse that I could act on instead of the curse. It's like a divergent path, but it's like I have to acknowledge that the temptation to act on a curse is like gravity, it pulls you. But the counterforce and the energy we have to mindfully exert is to repent, which seriously just means pivot your focus. So if there's two divergent paths and one's the curse and one's the anti-curse, yes, the curse will draw you in like gravity, and you're going to want to, it's tempting you towards it, but you literally consciously have to pivot and repent the other way to focus on the anti-curse. And it is a very hard but simple action. So I hope that illustrates curses and anti-curses.
I think it did. I think it illustrated it in a very real and very powerful way, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you.